Yikes. I'd like to call to order the Governance, Strategy, and City Operations Committee meeting. Roll call.
Councilor Armstrong?
Here.
Councilor McFarland? Mayor Reed? Councilor Kelly?
Here.
Councilor Gibbs?
Here.
Councilor Renzel?
Here.
Councilor Moore?
Here.
So, today we're going to look at the CD, parking lot, city clerk, and and I'll have some recommendations about rec complex. And so I'd like to start with our clerk, Sylvia Parrott. If you would like to present your report first.
So basically, I was able to stay online or under budget for most of my line items, with the exception of postage. So I will be over by about $200 this year. So, and I did, when I estimated my budget for next year, I went up to 900, but I think that needs to be adjusted to 1,300.
Yes.
When I did the budget, I only had one line item that showed 100 and some odd dollars had been expended to that point, and then nothing showed until October, so it was hard for me to estimate.
Right.
So I'll probably get with Richard and ask him to make that adjustment to that line item for you guys, okay? The municipal court budget, it runs different than our budget. So I anticipate an expense increase of approximately 15 to 23%, depending on when in the year those projects get done. Our fiscal year, I do my budget July or August for you guys, but I don't get their budget until June of the next year. They may say they want some projects, but I don't know what those projects are. And it really affects us only because the money comes out of the general fund initially, but then it gets reimbursed 105%. 100% for the projects, and then 5% additional for the admin cost. So it really does all come back to us. For the budget for 2020, there'll be an overall decrease of approximately 8.8%. A large portion of that is due to the fact that I will not have separation payout that I had this year. And with my new hire, there's no longevity yet, so there'll be a savings in that aspect. Contracted services, we paid the third and final installment of the general code, which is our code. So now we'll just be paying for supplements, and it's kind of hard to base the supplements. It depends on how many laws are passed, the size of the laws. So minor laws, like they'll do is general code will give me an estimate at my request every year based on the laws that passed the year before. So I anticipate a savings in that regard. The elections, I really don't control that. Clinton County Board of Elections does. There is a 79% increase. And that's primarily because of early voting. Next year's presidential year. So there'll be extra ballots. There's an increase in time. And I think
We had recommended maybe increasing
The
taxi
taxi, yep.
licenses.
That was the one thing. We didn't increase it when I increased all the other
Right.
permits. Remember, you and I'm not sure if it was Counselor
I can't
Kretzer
remember.
at the time, but we met with the taxi companies that agreed to meet with us, and at that time, we determined that we weren't going to increase their rates because they hadn't been able to increase their fare rates.
Right, but we did
So we
last
decided to
year.
increase the fare rates last year, and so based upon that, I thought maybe this year we should
Okay.
increase those taxi rates. Of course, if you choose to do that, you'll have to present a resolution.
Right.
And my recommendation would be start at January
And
1st.
I'm assuming that everybody on the council read your report and sees what you recommended. So we may be, ready to do that fairly
Okay.
soon.
Alrighty. Other than that, the consolidation of the churches, the bingo organization, my revenue is gonna be lower. We may not have any bingos this year at all. We definitely will not have one. One is still looking at a place to relocate, so they may start later in the year. So I ask that that line item be zeroed out. If we get revenue, that's great.
Yeah.
But let's not base,
Counter chickens.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, good call.
And I think that's about it.
All right.
You guys have anything for me?
No, I just think we'll follow up on your suggestion about the increase in license fees for taxis and get to that number. And I'm not sure of the process, but I'm pretty sure it'll happen. We'll get some consensus about that.
Okay,
All
perfect.
right?
Alrighty, thank you.
All right, so Director Miller.
I'll start with the Community Development Office budget. It's somewhat different than the budget that was proposed for 2019. We've had a few staff members leave, and we also have had considerable unexpected expenses that have been related to various aspects of the DRI. The 2020 request for regular payroll is 12% lower than what was originally requested for 2019. That reflects the shifting of a portion of the funding that had been previously allocated to our special promotions and special events coordinator position to our community engagement coordinator position some point last year, this year. We also hired a new planner at a higher pay rate than our previous planner, and we also hope to transition one CDO employee from 35 to 40 hours a week to bring that employee's time more into line with the average amount of time that she spends in a given week and save on some overtime charges. We don't expect the need for any temporary payroll or separation pay in 2020. The funds under materials and supplies, office supplies, telephone, print copy, fees, and postage are largely consistent with the amounts that were approved in 2019. The $2,000 requested for conferences represents the cost of annual membership in the New York Planning Federation for the 7 members of the city's planning board and 2 members of the CDO staff. The contracted services item under CDO does deserve some special attention because at the time of the publishing of the mayor's budget, it was sitting at nearly $700,000. That is the result of all of the DRI expenses that prior to instructions from the city's auditors were being treated as prepaid expenses. Those have subsequently been transferred by the finance department to a separate account. So the current figure that is showing under the CD contracted services line is more in line with what we actually anticipate to spend by the end of the year. The 2019 projection year end of $145,000, that represents all of the contracted services that are not reimbursable through the DRI. The bulk of these expenses continue to be incurred as part of the generic environmental impact statement process, and they represent payments to the city's consultant, Chase & Companies, and also to the city's secret attorney. And I also think it's important for the public to understand that these charges are largely the result of threatened litigation against certain projects that the city is pursuing, and that those actions don't only come with legal fees attached to it, they also come with considerable upfront costs when such threats are made. Other 19 expenses under contracted services were payments to our CFA consultants and various engineering work related to the DRI projects, but not eligible for reimbursement through the DRI grant for various reasons. The $45,000 that I've requested for contracted services in 2020 reflects more in line with the 2018 actual figure for the line item, and it reflects what the CDO expects to have spent had it not been for the GEIS process and all the associated fees that came with it. Minor decreases in funding for the city's special events budget are reflected as well. The total allocations were $125,000 in 2019, and in 2020, $118,000 has been requested. Now, the CDO also administers Downtown Special Assessment District, and we're responsible for that budget as well. That's referred to in the mayor's budget as the parking lot, and it includes significant departures from the 2019 budget, which reflect changes recommended to the city's parking program in anticipation of the commencement of construction on many of the DRI projects. The regular pay line for the parking fund has been increased by almost $60,000. Previously, the only city employee whose time was charged to the parking fund was our downtown laborer. In 2020, the salary of the city's parking enforcement officer, which up until the end of this year was being charged to the city's police department budget, will be charged to that line. And I've also added in the expected cost of 2 additional part-time employees to fill out our enforcement staff as that becomes a more important part of the parking management system downtown. Overtime pay has also been increased accordingly to account for the additional staff and expected additional duties. The funding for vehicle supplies, vehicle parts, electric, water, sewer, and contracted services are largely consistent with the funds approved for 2019, and a minor increase in the materials and supplies budget was included based on the actual figure from 2018. The contracted services line includes a substantial increase, which reflects the recommendation from the Plattsburgh Parking Advisory Committee that the city enact a fee-based parking system in the downtown core, which utilizes not only parking permits, but only electronic parking kiosks as well. Now, discussions regarding the scale and timing of the implementation of that system are ongoing. The 2019 projection figure of $137,000 that was included in the original mayor's budget was submitted when the possibility of a paid parking system being rolled out in 2019 was still a realistic possibility. The $125,000 request that I had submitted for 2020 is based partly on the estimates that we received in response to the city's RFP for multi-space meters and pay stations, and it represents the expected cost of a system of moderate size and complexity. On the revenue side of the parking lot budget, the estimates for the SAD are identical to that of 2019. Now, while the implementation of a paid parking system could allow for the reduction or elimination of the special assessment district, it would be premature to enact any kind of change without first ensuring the revenue model intended to take its place has proved itself viable. 2 major changes to revenue projections relate to permits and parking fees. Up until 2019, parking permits and fees, parking permits generated little to no revenue for the city. The amount that was included for revenue generated by permits in 2020 of $90,000, that is based on an estimate of 250 permits being made available at $30 per month for 12 months a year. You get 90 grand. And those were intended to be used primarily in off-street parking lots. The $75,000 increase in parking fees, that is at this point still highly speculative, but represents what the city could reasonably expect to generate if a paid parking system of moderate size and complexity were instituted in the downtown area, and would also more or less balance out our revenues and expenses for the parking fund, that $75,000 figure.
Okay,
Or a couple of questions.
sure.
First of all, the decline in special events budget, Skippy, I don't think is because you're anticipating doing any less in special events, but just doing the same amount in slightly different ways and more efficiently. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. And I don't think you're anticipating doing anything about the existing 2 hours free parking. I think the committee's always been describing ways to allow people to park on a paid basis for longer than the 2 hours.
Yeah, that was part of the recommendations from the committee. Yep. Any questions from the council?
Council?
It does appear that it's a little tricky to go from the SAD to paid parking. Do you have any thoughts on refunding the SAD if it's not all used in a given year? Or?
If the council authorized the implementation of a paid system that starts in July of 2020, then I think it would be reasonable to refund a certain portion of special assessment district fees that had been collected up to that point.
Okay.
That sounds fair.
Yep.
And if I understand correctly, you've actually budgeted some of this parking revenue into your parking lot budget for next year.
That's right, and it's still, of course, highly speculative based on, many things still need to be decided, but I think those are conservative figures based on the discussions that have been had thus far.
As far as the reconfiguration of parking that we're undergoing, that's mostly all covered by the FRB, is that a true
Yeah, the
statement?
vast majority of the costs associated with the completion of the parking projects downtown will be covered by the FRB grant that has been awarded to the city.
But did the FRB say to us that we must implement a paid parking system in order
Yes,
to take
the-
advantage of those funds?
Yes, the FRB award was contingent upon the city implementing a paid system downtown.
Good point.
I always say somebody has to pay for parking. and-
Somebody always does.
Yes, so I guess the thinking now is maybe drivers ought to pay for parking.
That's the thinking now, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So to
Thank
follow
you,
up with
Matt.
your question, on your question, Mike, the stipulation with the FRB, is there a stipulation about how much parking or how much money has to come in from parking? Like, is there any specific contingency with the FRB money?
The language of the FRB award is somewhat, it provides the city a considerable amount of flexibility in the scale of the rollout and the purposes to which the award funds can be put towards.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
Matt.
you.
Okay, now it looks like we have some people in the audience who are ready for this part of the report. So here are the recommendations of the Governance Operations and Strategy Committee regarding RecCom. Certain aspects of our recommendations are still being worked upon, and I'll elaborate on that in a little bit. So, just to, provide a little bit of context, over the years, questions about RecCom's finances, facility integrity, and public use have been raised, but answers have been put on hold. And no question, we have a staff that's worked very, very hard, and, given certain limitations, that the facilities have presented, we've got a lot of great programs, but this is the year where we really had to put the finances under the microscope. We've had some time to think about the facility's costs and revenues. And when the 5-year budget outlook trajectory was presented in June, that kind of started the ball rolling regarding how to analyze RecCom. We did that. Our committee, Patrick McFarland and I, did this in collaboration with the City Chamberlain and the Finance Committee, and worked very hard to take a look at the numbers which we presented to you guys last month. No question, we value the quality of life and all of the the ways in which life is enhanced by having recreation services. The question is, what serves the broadest sector of the public, and how can we best serve everyone? So, just to review the budget review process, I don't have a slideshow presentation, so I'll just review the numbers. We had some gross cost shortfalls that we were trying to work with, and I'll summarize them in a minute. But we asked our managers to work with these percentages and try to come closer to covering operational expenses. We didn't ask that debt service or any amount that would be spent on maintenance and repair be included in what they needed to come up with in order to increase fees to cover operations. So for the city beach, if you recall, the total costs were reported to be $140,295, and the total revenue $87,569, with a deficit of $52,726. So we asked that 51% be worked with as a target to cover the shortfall. And the managers have been working with that. They've been working really hard. We've received some, for all of these that I will report to you, they've come up with a draft, and we're considering that draft. Same is true of the, a little bit different recommendation for the marina, but I'll repeat what the costs were for 2019, the projected costs, $248,624, with revenue coming in at $102,371, with a shortfall of $145,893. So we would need an increase in revenue of 43% in order to make up that shortfall. All right, so this one is going to be a kind of departure from our approach to increasing fees with the other facilities. So in the case of the marina, I want to give you a little bit of history. Before Plattsburgh took on the marina idea as a public facility, I was on the council along with Councilor Kelly that worked with the idea of leasing the marina. That idea didn't prevail. Originally, though, that was the idea. You would sign on a long-term lease with a company, and they would lease it, and the city would get some of the revenue from that lease. In the meantime, though, as you may recall, we entered into an agreement with NAV Tours just to manage the marina, not to lease the marina, and they were the managers. In return, they got a certain number of slips at the marina as a kind of, shall we say, quid pro quo. And so they managed that for a couple of years, but their contract with us expired, their management contract, and we took it over. And since then, we have city personnel completely in charge of the management of the marina. And they've done a great job. This is no reflection on the job they've done, but if you look at, what I just described as the shortfall, this has caused our committee to reconsider, how viable this is, and whether this is really a good use of city resources, when in fact, the vast majority of the tenants at the marina are from elsewhere, not local. So what we are recommending is that we return to the original concept for the marina, and that is to lease it. Lease is probably not the technical term, but I think we're going to enter into a license agreement. We're going to send out an RFP to have someone else manage the marina. So that will hopefully cover the shortfall there. Now, as far as the Old Base Gym, in 2019, the costs were $498,963 and revenue at $237,070, with a shortfall of $261,893. Now, once again, we gave this shortfall percentage of 69% to our manager at the gym, and he's been diligently working and has come up with some figures to bridge that gap, and appreciate again all the hard work that you and all the others have done in order to come up with these proposals. And we'll be considering those, and as soon as we get them in digital format, we'll circulate them among the council and we'll consider them. The Crate Center, in 2019, projected costs and revenue were costs $318,853 and revenue $144,015 with a shortfall of $174,838. So there was a terrific shortfall there of 97%. And once again, the manager is working with that. We're pretty close, and we really appreciate all your efforts and diligence in trying to meet these costs. Once again, just for the public, the debt service, which is considerable at the Crate Center, which someone has pointed out to me will be retired, but there are so many repairs to the Crate Center that need to be considered if we were to keep it open. That's a kind of moot point. We're going to try to meet those shortfalls by the fee increases there, and you will get a report, official report on those recommendations next week. In terms of the capital budget for 2020, our committee recommends that the council adopt the capital plan as reflected in the mayor's budget. This devotes some money to renovation of the beach bathhouse and other really seriously deteriorated parts of the beach and the crate and whatever. It's all there, and we're going to keep that as is. But as this plan plays out over the course of 2020, the committee suggests that a strategic plan be developed for enhancing assets that serve the majority of Plattsburgh residents, the beach and park. So we're recommending that the 2021 capital budget include more funds for the beach and the parks, which we feel better serve the majority of our public. Now, concerning capital budget planning for the Old Base Gym and Crate Center, the percentages, I've said this too many times probably, only cover operational expenses, not debt service on old or projected loans for capital improvements. As my October report indicated, these facilities need the repairs that have been really deferred way too long. And because necessary capital investments are projected for the Crate Center at around $3 million, and that's official, I mean, that's extrapolated from an official report done in 2015, and those are coming. And as you recall, we made some projections and guesstimates about what would be necessary for improvements to the gym, and they were considerable expenses too. Of course, you would need an engineering report to really verify those figures. So, but our recommendation as a committee is that both facilities, because they draw significant numbers of patrons who live outside the city, there should be working groups organized, made up of regional stakeholders to come up with a strategic plan for the Crate and for the Old Base Gym. And that would be organized, I hope, in 2021 or soon. And that's about it for that. We have, any questions?
Yeah, I just had
Sure.
two questions actually, Rochelle, regarding the marina.
Yes.
The cost, the $248,000 cost is purely operational, it doesn't include debt?
Nope.
Well, that includes debt, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Huh?
Doesn't include that.
It does include debt, yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So then that $248,000 figure does not include, or does include debt service, so, and the other figures do not include
Right.
debt service, so that one does include debt service.
Thank you.
And also, does this plan, or what you're recommending, I should say, your committee recommending also include the operations plan for, not operation, but also include Wilcox
No.
plan?
No, this was, when we profiled Rec Complex, we did not cover, as you recall, Wilcox. We strictly focused on the Deepwater Marina.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Just like to say, we've been given a sneak preview of the rec complex's proposal for the facilities, and you're close, you're real close, and we appreciate that. But I guess we'd like for you to sharpen up your pencils a little more and see if you can find some additional revenue there. You're real close on the crate, I believe, and the beach. But it'd be nice if you could hit our targets, and it would also be nice if you could hit our target on the gym as well. And there you're close too, but not quite as close as with the other two.
Yeah, I'm just worried if I go too high, we're gonna,
I understand, we can discuss that in another forum, but
I'd like to.
the numbers that you are given here are numbers we really do want to achieve. One of the things that we do want to do is, in the future, is invest more money in those programs, as Rochelle said, that people use a lot, such as the beach and the city parks. So if we can make these 4 programs sustainable, then we can focus more on those parks and the beach. So those are the numbers we'd like for you to achieve, or at least come very close. Okay.
Any other comments?
I just had one. I really want to
Sure.
thank you, Councilor Armstrong, for the time and effort that you put into this. I know you put your heart and soul into this, and we thank you for your efforts.
Well, thank you. And I couldn't have done it without your help. So, I would like to entertain a motion to move items 1 through 8 to the regular agenda. I guess we don't have anybody. Okay, I'll move that, and Mayor second.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes.
All right. Any old business? Any new business? I move that we adjourn. Do you agree?
Second?
Okay.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes. Now brings us to the working session part of our common council meeting for tonight. Council would like to have any additional discussion on any items on the agenda tonight, many of which are dominated by relatively routine budget adjustments. And we did talk in our department heads meeting today about budget adjustments. You do see them coming out with a lot of frequency near the end of the year. And we really want to try to offer as much discussion and include them in the agenda so you all can be observing where the budget items are necessary to be adjusted. So if you see them coming out at a greater pace right now, that's the reason why. While you're mulling over any potential questions on the budget adjustments, we could also offer committee reports, perhaps beginning with Councilor Armstrong, Governance, Strategy, and City Operations.
I don't know if
No
I.
report?
No, yes, so here's my report, but in addition, I like to report out on the Plattsburgh Sustainability Task Force, which will be meeting next Wednesday at 4 o'clock. It's open to the public, and we've been mulling over procurement policies that are environmentally responsible and reviewing those of other municipalities, and the goal is to kind of bring together the best practices and ideas so that we can modify, hopefully before the end of the year, our procurement policy and do an attachment to that. Also working on a plan to recycle in preparation for writing a policy for recycling at all public events and areas in the city. We're going to run a pilot of recycling at the holiday parade December 7th, and members of the climate action community will be volunteering to receive, help people sort whatever they may have that can be recycled, so that we can do that. I've been working with the mayor and Ethan about how to institute recycling in our offices citywide. So those are the two projects that we're working on.
I might add, we had a meeting this week for OpenGov, as you know.
That's
we're
right.
continuing on with the implementation of that. We have an intern helping us out. We expect to have substantial implementation before our two counselors retire at the end of this year. So aiming for a rollout on December 19th, our final meeting.
Right.
We'll
I've been
be
invited to meetings, so that's nice.
meeting once or twice a week, so it's very
Twice, I think,
active.
yeah.
And Chamberlain Marks and I think the interns here tonight, ongoing, couldn't be here, but making really good progress.
Good.
City Infrastructure, Councilor Moore.
Well, I just wanted to comment on the continuing project, Protection Avenue. It's coming along very well. I know it's an inconvenience to a lot of people, but that's the price we pay for progress. That is gonna make that area a lot more beautiful. It's gonna be better lit. It's a big improvement. And the other comment I got a comment from a constituent that there's a large pothole forming at the corner of Margaret and Boynton Avenue. I did get a chance to go look at it myself, but I did get that report, so I'm
There
just
is.
passing that on. There is. That's all I had.
Just one thing, for the infrastructure committee, this week I noticed that DPW did some substantial patching on Beekman, which was long overdue, so it's nice to see that work being done.
They're in full pothole remedy mode right now. They pretty much finished off their paving projects, of course, except for Protection Avenue. You may see that they're using a different machine that will be able to grind and take a nice square cut when they repair the potholes, instead of just shoving a bunch of stuff in the pothole itself, but they're widening out the area, and they've got a machine that's probably gonna do a much more robust job on that.
There's a big difference on Beekman Street just in the past 2 days.
They're hoping to pave Protection Avenue perhaps as early as next week. The sidewalks are expected to be poured the remainder part of this week. And we will have the city-county joint parking lot paved this weekend, likely on Saturday is the hopes, weather all permitting this time of year. So an awful lot of paving remains to be done.
They expect the whole thing done by next Friday, I believe.
Thank you. Finance and Budget, Councilor Kelly.
I just had some comments on item 7A that we're going to discuss and vote on tonight. Maybe I should wait, but we set aside $100,000, as you recall, in a contingency fund to try to get our department heads to address overtime expenses, particularly in the police and fire department. And I'm a little torn in how to vote on this. I understand the need to balance the budget, of course, but we tried really hard to encourage our department heads to reduce overtime spending, and that's where I'm torn, because if you look at the police department budget over the years, they have reduced overtime quite a bit. They may not be at the level that we would like, but I don't know what to do on this, and I defer to Counselors Insel and Gibbs maybe to help me out a little bit, and the mayor.
You might also note, Mike, on the report that we received today, that as of the end of the pay period, the 11/8 pay period, there are 3 departments that have exceeded their annual overtime budget already. On the
Okay,
back, next page.
next page, okay. Okay, so fire, police, and DPW.
Well, no, not fire. Fire is,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Fire's
Fire's
good,
under budget.
okay, yep. So,
what's that?
Fire will be exceeded before the end of the year. At the rate they're running right now, the burn rate is gonna exceed that 60 of 100 left.
When this comes up on the agenda, we can discuss it at that time, but I just wanted to give you advance notice that I'm a little concerned about this.
And I happened to see that tonight when reading through the reports on the other departments as well.
Okay, that's good information, Peter, thank you.
Anything else to add?
That's it.
Public safety, Counselor Gibbs.
I have no updates.
Plattsburgh Public Library, Counselor Ansel.
No report?
And MLD, I think we met later last week. If you'd like, you can now use this opportunity to have further discussion on that item. We still have 15 minutes left in our work session.
Yeah, so can somebody explain this to me exactly? So it says adjusted 2019 budget by 68,439, as well as a decrease to general fund contingency for the budget transfer from police overtime of 38,239. I did,
Okay,
but I'm just thinking for the sake of the public.
well, it's looking like $7,000 a week is police overtime, and with about 9 weeks left, including one for this week, that's 63,000 for the end of the year. And they only had 13,000 left in their budget. So it has to have an increase of about 54,000, I think. And there was 38,239 taken out of their budget at the beginning of the year and moved into contingency for overtime.
Mm-hmm.
So moving that back to help cover this budget deficit for the overtime.
So this is actually part of the contingency fund that's being transferred?
Pardon me?
This is part of the contingency money that's being transferred?
$38,000 was the amount that was moved into contingency out of the police overtime budget. And now I'm recommending moving it back to help cover this deficit. And in addition, they have $10,000 worth of additional motor vehicle expenses they need to cover from
Yep, I saw
accidents.
But so it says here, it's not going to increase the budget.
So just transfer
Transferring
between
money.
accounts.
Okay. That's an important distinction, you know, in this conversation that we're having.
But if you recall, we set that money aside in
Mhm.
hopes that it would affect overtime usage, and in this case, it didn't, so.
In most cases, it won't, because the payroll won't stop. If
Right.
the budget is
Right.
exceeded. You have to pay people each week.
The-
So as the overtime comes through, it has to be paid.
Yeah,
So even though it's an interesting exercise to move it and say, okay, we'll control it that way, unless someone's looking at every payroll and saying, okay, I can't work any more overtime after this because I've exceeded it, it won't stop.
I think, we've had some discussions about this, and that sometimes the factors are not in the control of the department manager. The overtime has to be granted, and that's something we can work on long-term. And I think also that, the police department, has over the years, if you look at, previous years' budgets, they have decreased their overtime. So they're doing some things that are right. They're just, I don't think we can expect the grand slam that we were looking for this year. we're getting small increments in improvement every year, so I'm inclined reluctantly to vote for this, but just want to hear what other people think about it.
On the other hand, their regular payroll budget is well under at this point.
Under.
By how much, Richard?
The remaining budget there is $604,000, and they're not gonna use that much of budget in a year. And we've already taken $44,000 out of that for budget transfers in the last round of doing this for the police department.
Do you have any idea what their payroll may be under budget, their regular payroll may?
I'd have to look at it closely. I know I did an analysis of the overtime. That's averaging $7,000 a week for the last 9 weeks.
Mhm.
And I'm saying another 9, and you can look at the report today, how much was it? 9,000. For the police department. And their payroll is weekly, not bi-weekly.
Right.
Now, the amount of that overtime that's in the report, 9,700, I think 8,800 specifically went to the police department, and the balances to the other departments, such as crossing guards or whatever else that they have charges for. Non-police people. So the 7,000 estimate weekly for the rest of the year is, I believe, a pretty good one.
Thank you.
I do know that,
What the expected. end
Yeah,
is.
I'd be
With payroll,
curious to
we're
see the
up to
comparison of
Yeah.
what they are under regular payroll
Yeah.
compared to.
Project that and send it to the mayor tomorrow, and we'll have a good look at what the total between the two accounts will come out to be for the end of the year.
Thank you.
Okay.
I do know that the Public Safety Committee is looking at this very carefully and trying to develop policies to manage overtime. And of course, some of the other users of overtime, you know, that's contingent on the extensive road work on some major roads this year that we felt should be done at night to not cause severe traffic jams on, for instance, Cornelia Avenue.
We had some bad water breaks too
We did.
throughout the night.
We had a pretty bad snow season last year as well, if you recall. And so some of them are just a consequence of our road building strategy, et cetera, and others are perhaps things we can look at in policy, and I know your committee is looking at that very closely. Any other discussion you'd like to have before we begin our regular session? Seeing none, would you like to take a 10-minute break, and we'll resume at 5:30? Thank you.
Nope.
We're done.
Oh, yeah, I do. No, no, it's fine.
I did notice today, yes, and he was right. Right over Richard.
They do.
So anyway, I was sent it. She can just.
I've seen it. I've seen it. It's getting it can still No, 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 no. I think that there needs to be, Levi's restaurants. It's him and it's Captain Kirk. I know that lieutenants come out of there. And there isn't really an incentive for them to come out. So you have sergeants in the force, and they're on their contract. They're on contract. We've got a number of things I think that need to happen. So he,
I think it breaks it down. More detail. Switch is probably about.
you know, it's a lot to do. Drug enforcement, you know, got lots of switch. So, we're gonna have to look at creating an incentive for those people to come out of the contract means or we're gonna have to do a tighter management of the sergeants who are already It's the thing that I can do. It's really good budget.
Well, that was the whole purpose of this $100,000.
For the Christmas.
Help out. Seems to be that the industry doing some good.
Yeah, my wife's going to they have to go to a residency.
And so this is really good. I wanted to get through budget season figure out how to bring down some of those costs. They're eligible for it. We have to tell them.
Well, hopefully not.
We can't just say, oh, this is tomorrow, get it. But with these guys,
Make a lot happen.
so we're gonna have to, you know how I feel about that, even questions already about what I think we should do or something, so.
I'm gonna try to get back to
All right, have fun.
Oh, yeah? Where is he? Peter was on with the probably fly to Tokyo, DC to Tokyo. I did it for the flyer thing. I think I'm coming back.
Good work, Michelle.
Oh, thanks. I don't know,
So did
I read that email tonight.
So did I understand this correctly? That, so what you're thinking of here is increase fees, not debt service this year, right? So you're not gonna use debt service to cover the cost, and then you're going to suggest, and we're gonna council, a 2021 capital improvement plan.
Right.
I wanna make sure I'm right.
And as of now, I mean, I asked them the question. Please, visit parks, do something with their parks now.
No, that's the response I get when I have the meetings with departments, we say we have to
So,
cut the budget.
I guess there's just such air. Some money should be put in.
Actually, they took it pretty well. didn't
About yeah, hallelujah. Right, and then about this, the why it's already organized to analyze the why might make their
I did say that. I did say that email. Right? Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I gotta take that out. I think it was up to 100 items. Good idea, I'm gonna take that out. Maybe some things we should work on now that we're getting stuff. There's a lot of good Sylvia was so cute in her presentation. She's so diligent. She's Sylvia Smith. Joe's kind of the same. She's very conscious, super conscious. Start, it is time to start.
So for the first time in my entire teaching career,
Let's begin tonight's common council meeting, please, with the pledge of allegiance.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Reed.
Present.
Counselor Armstrong.
Here.
Counselor Kelly.
Here.
Counselor Gibbs.
Here.
Counselor Ensel.
Here.
Counselor McFarland. Counselor Moore.
Here.
I was going to begin by introducing the person who just won the election for your ward, Ira Barlow. He was here a moment ago. Is he still up there?
He had enough.
Yeah. Boy, these meetings go quickly. You get to go 5 minutes. Well, I'm sure we'll see lots of them. So congratulations to both candidates that ran great elections. I have also a proclamation that we often issue this time of year. Whereas the government of the city of Plattsburgh, New York celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local community and economy. According to the United States Small Business Administration, there are 30.7 million small businesses in the United States. They represent 99.7% of all firms with paid employees in the United States and are responsible for 64.9% of net new jobs created from 2000 to 2018. And whereas small businesses employ 47.3% of the employees in the private sector in the United States, and whereas 94% of consumers in the United States value the contribution small businesses make in their community. And whereas 96% of consumers who plan to shop on Small Business Saturdays said the day inspires them to go to small independently owned retailers or restaurants that they have not been able to before or would not have otherwise tried. Whereas 92% of companies planning promotions on Small Business Saturday say the day helps their business stand out during the busy holiday shopping season. Whereas 59% of small business owners said Small Business Saturdays contribute significantly to their holiday sales each year. Whereas the city of Plattsburgh, New York supports our local businesses that create jobs, boosts our local economy, and preserves our community. Whereas advocacy groups as well as public and private organizations across the country have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Now therefore I call on Reed, Mayor of the City of Plattsburgh, New York, to hereby proclaim November 30th, 2019 as Small Business Saturday and urge the residents of our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. Thank you. Please continue.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on October 31st, 2019 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending November 6, 2019 in the amount of $488,715.48 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Moore. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. You have in your packet the reports from city offices. Are there any additional committee reports you'd like to offer at this time? Seeing none, resolved that the reports as listed are hereby ordered received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Gibbs and second by Councilor Ensel. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. There's no correspondences or recommendations from boards at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the bills audited by the Common Council for the week ending November 8, 2019 in the amount of $1,540,394.13 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly and second by Councilor Moore. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Are there any persons who'd like to please come address the council on any issues on the agenda tonight? There will be another public comment period for general issues at the end of the meeting. And the agendas can be found right outside the door there. Seeing none, please continue.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves the city chamberlain to adjust the 2019 general fund police budget by $68,439 of increases to appropriations for over budget and projected over budget police accounts to an equal amount of decreases to appropriation in police accounts, as well as a decrease to general fund contingency for the budget transfer from police overtime of $38,239 transferred by council resolution on January 17, 2019. The net effect of these budget transfers will not increase the 2019 general fund budget.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Gibbs?
Yes.
Councilor Ensel?
Yes.
Councilor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves the city chamberlain to adjust the 2019 water and sewer budgets for $15,000 and $5,000 respectively for appropriations transfers to provide for water and sewer repairs, parts, purchases.
Moved by Counselor Moore, second by Counselor Ansel. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ansel?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the city chamberlain to adjust the 2019 general fund budget by $22,000 for an increase in appropriations to provide for the purchase and implementation of OpenGov application software for the city's website. This adjustment will increase the 2019 general fund budget by $22,000.
Moved by Counselor Ansel, second by Counselor Gibbs. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ansel?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the city chamberlain to adjust the 2019 parking fund budget for $15,692 of additional unplanned costs for 2019 property taxes and for $4,770 for appropriations transfers to provide for projected over budget accounts by 2019 year end. This adjustment will increase the 2019 parking fund budget by $15,692.
Moved by Counselor Armstrong, second by Counselor Gibbs. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ansel?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the city chamberlain to adjust the 2019 general fund budget for $18,136 of appropriations transfers to provide for finance, data processing, and unemployment cost center accounts projected to be over budgeted by 2019 year end. These budget transfers will not increase the 2019 general fund budget.
Moved by Counselor Ansel, second by Counselor Armstrong. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ansel?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council agrees to and authorizes the execution of the attached October 11th, 2019 construction administration services proposal from CDM Smith. Funding will be from capital project H8130.63.
Moved by Counselor Kelly, second by Counselor Gibbs. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ansel?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council agrees to and authorizes the execution of the attached November 1st, 2019 First Amendment to Residual Service Agreement with New England Waste Services of Maine, Inc., DBA Casella Organics.
Moved by Counselor Armstrong, second by Counselor Gibbs. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ansel?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Contractual services with AEDA for engineering surveying services. Whereas AEDA has provided a scope of work and proposal for the subdivision of 52 U.S. Oval in accordance with New York State subdivision law and City of Plattsburgh zoning code requirements. And whereas AEDA will provide engineering surveying services to complete all tasks identified in the scope of work for the lump sum fee of $8,900, and therefore be it resolved in accordance with the request, the common council approves that the mayor is authorized to sign the AEDA standard form of agreement for professional services.
Moved by Counselor Moore, second by Counselor Armstrong. Discussion?
Yes, I have a question. Is 52 US Oval a vacant lot?
The Chapman's house, it's on the same lot as the rec center or the gym, but it's a standalone building, but it's part of the same parcel, so for a subdivision in order to potentially deem it surplus property and then sell it if that's
Oh,
the likely
okay,
route.
okay. I wasn't quite sure where that was located and why we were doing this, Dean, so thank you.
Yeah, but there hasn't been, it was used years ago for some kind of police services. More recently, it was leased out to a private party. That lease was terminated maybe 2 years ago, so since that time, it's just been upkeep, and there's some repairs that are necessary to lease it again, and it didn't make financial sense based on the market for the lease rate versus the potential value of a sale. So that decision to deem it surplus has not yet been made, but in order to be confronted with that, we first need to subdivide it off.
Okay, thank you.
And
And there has been considerable interest from the public in purchasing that property. I've heard from 2 or 3 separate people over the last 6 months.
Very good.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
There's no trouble requested this time. Are there any resolutions for initial consideration? Any new business or additional counselor reports? I do know that we've been working in earnest on preparing the generic EIS for some time now, and councilors, you've seen some preliminary work and drafts on it. Please continue on your due diligence. So we're all prepared when that's brought up, and that's of course just going to open up the process of discussion and refinement on the GEIS. So there'll be certainly many opportunities to comment, but please continue to work on the documents as they come forward. Any additional new business or council reports? Seeing none, this is an opportunity for the public to please come address the council for any issues of mutual concern. Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Gibbs and second by Councillor Ensel. Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Thank you, folks.
This makes me very happy.
But they make you read every single one.
I just didn't do anything really. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry. Could you make a statement on the council?
Oh my goodness.
Mackenzie.
Well, this has been a real